Good morning, moms and Master Books. Welcome to Teaching Tips Thursday. Hey, today I'm going to talk a little bit about homeschooling is harder today than it's ever been in the past. Some people may say, oh, I don't believe that, but I believe it's true. And I also want to talk about maybe 3 ways that we can help make homeschooling a little bit easier for the homeschooling mom today. So why do I think homeschooling is harder today than it's ever been before? Well, when we started homeschooling, now, this is a big generalization, and there's many different factors and everything else, so I'm just going to be very broad brush and opinionated if that's okay. When we started homeschooling early on, there weren't many curriculum companies that were really working with homeschoolers. So the first thing that makes it more complicated is we didn't have the options in early homeschoolers. In fact, there were for years that companies like Abeka, BJU, none of them, LifePack, they wouldn't even sell to homeschoolers. ACE was one of the first companies to actually say, well, we'll let homeschoolers use our curriculum. Isn't that crazy? So we didn't even have as many options in homeschooling. In fact, in the early days, there was Saxon Math. There wasn't all the options. You didn't have a teaching textbooks or master books or any of these. You just had, Saxon Math was kind of one of those outliers, or maybe some public school textbooks that you could get, or a curriculum like Abeka or BJU that were used in Christian schools. Now, there are so many different options, so many different flavors, so many different ways to homeschool. So a homeschool mom today definitely faces a different challenge in that she has a lot more options. Have you ever watched one of the programs like Restaurant Makeover or Restaurant Impossible, where they walk in and you have a menu with 100 different items and how complicated that is? And what's one of the first things he does? He goes in and he says, we're going to cut this menu down to 5 items, and we're going to reduce choices because choices complicate things. And so I think as I go through the internet, my job for marketing is often to go through the internet and just, what's being said about Master Books, what are the challenges that moms have, what are happening in the industry. And I'm overwhelmed by all of the discussion of this person has this, and here's a new curriculum that's out, and here's something new that's going on. And, the moms that step into homeschooling today is just completely overwhelmed by the choices that are available. I would say the second reason that things are more complicated in homeschooling is a number of influences. So when we started homeschooling years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there were a handful of influencers that you would look to for expert advice, right? You would go to maybe Kathy Duffy's top 103 picks for homeschooling, and she did a pretty thorough investigation of the curriculum and what the pros, what the cons were, those types of things. There were only a handful, Mary Pride, Practical Homeschooling. You would go to a convention, and once a year you would go to a convention. You would sit there at the convention, and you would pick your seminars, and you'd go to that class, and maybe an expert would speak on a curriculum type. There weren't thousands of voices out there competing for your attention. There was just a handful, and it was in a book. They were print books or a magazine that maybe talked about it that you got once a month. So you had information coming from a few sources once a month or once a year that you had to kind of work through that information. Today, completely different. We have information overload. I'm absolutely blown away. The number of bloggers and self-proclaimed experts, even people like me today doing a video on this, another voice out here competing for the attention of people. That's what we do. We compete for attention. And I'm amazed at how much information. When I type in Master Books, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so complicated. There are so many bloggers out there representing us and talking about us in ways, and we appreciate all the attention that we get. But sometimes I'm like, I didn't realize it was so complicated in having to try to understand Master Books. just because everybody represents it differently. And so if you're a new mom and you're stepping into homeschooling and you're trying to make sense of this crazy world, you don't just have a few voices to listen to once a year at a homeschool convention. You now turn on your internet and you see thousands of voices trying to tell you why you should listen to them, why they're the expert. And so I think that makes the challenge for a homeschool mom today is so much more challenging. The other thing that I would say would be style, right? This is funny, so go with me on this. Don't get mad. But when we started homeschooling, the homeschool uniform, if you will, was a denim jumper. Now, Kristen never wore this, but the homeschool uniform, if you really wanted to be taken seriously as a homeschool mom of influence, you wore a denim jumper and white shoes, like the white cotton sneakers. That's what you wore. And I just had a funny conversation this week with somebody who had gone to the conventions, and they ran a booth. And she said one time we were all there in our denim jumpers and our white shoes, and we were all feeling pretty good about ourselves. And she said a new family walked into the booth, and he was looking around, and he said, "If my wife has to look like this, we are not homeschooling." And she said he was dead serious, and he wasn't being mean. He was just stating the obvious that, hey, if you wanted to be a homeschool mom, there was only one outfit you had to wear. There was only one way you had to be, right? I mean, you had to drive a 12 or a 15 passenger van, wear a denim jumper, and that, you know, maybe if you're a radical, you put your hair, you covered your head. Today, oh my goodness, we work with different influencers, and does homeschooling have more billionaires than ever before? I mean, seriously, I see these Instagram photos of some of the influencers. The kitchens must have cost $50,000, and every picture is perfect. As I was going through some of the influencers' pictures, not just for us, but some of the other products out there and different things, I just thought, if I was 20 or 30 years old and starting out in homeschooling, and I'm thinking of what it was like to barely scrape by enough money at tax time to buy curriculum for my kids, and you know, you're just working through life, right? So you have a starter home and starter furniture and all these things. And my kids, you know, they're normal kids, and I'm a normal looking guy. And I saw those pictures. It would be so hard not to compare myself or compete. We say comparison is the death of happiness. I believe that. But if I'm honest, I'm a competitive person. And so when I open up Instagram and I see the influencers and I see this picture perfect house, part of me begins to ache a little bit that I'm not providing that kind of kitchen and backdrop for my family's homeschool, and that Kristen isn't sitting there immaculately in the kitchen that I've provided for with, you know, beautiful white countertops and not a scrape. I have 9 kids. Like, they destroy things. They're like termites. They eat through my furniture. They eat through my cupboards. They eat through my house, right? Sometimes you walk through the house and you're like, it's like a garage. There's so many grease and dirt marks that happen on a door as they all walk through. And it doesn't matter how many times you scrub it. That's just the way it happens. But not on Instagram, not on these photos. And I'm like, these are billionaires now that are homeschooling and using our curriculum. It's impressive. And for the average homeschool mom that we encounter, I think, wow, if I had to compete against this, where these people are supermodels and their kids are all perfect and their homes are gorgeous and they use every curriculum imaginable. I came across one video and this lady put it out, all of the curriculum that her second grader was going to use. It was almost every book Master Books sold. I was happy about that because I do marketing. But she also had like cleaned out Amazon and Rainbow Resources and CBD. The table was like so full. And I thought, wow, not only is this family, they were all models and look like they belong, you know, they must just own like hotel chains or something big and fancy, because their house is absolutely beautiful. But their kids are able to do all this curriculum. There's all this hands-on stuff and all this different stuff. And I'm thinking, I can't imagine having to compete in that world where like, not only I can't just go buy a denim jumper anymore. I would look silly in a denim jumper, but I can't just go buy a denim jumper anymore to fit into the world. I actually have to look amazing. I have to look like all my kids have it together. We do compete a lot of times, and some of us are better at that than others. And here's 3 things that as I was going through the influencers, and I just thought, if I was able to speak to a 20 or 30 something person and give some of my advice, this is maybe 3 things that I would offer up in the world that you have today, where you have all these choices, influencers that set the bar so high, and then all the choices that you have. In marketing, one of the things we do is we have a unique selling proposition. We don't need to be a Becca. Master Books doesn't need to be a Becca. There is an Becca, and they are awesome. And I love that they are here in the market, and I love what they do. We don't need to be BJU or Apologia. When people say, well, how do you compare to? Well, we don't really want to compare to them because the world already has them. And if you're a family who loves a Becca, then you should use a Becca. That's fine. We saw a need, and we had product that could fill that need, and we had the ability to create teacher guides. And Kristen's been homeschooling for a lot of years, and so she brought some expertise into the culture here to say, if we did this with our products, we could create a product that would really be beneficial to families. And so Master Books' unique selling proposition is there's two things. Number one, where faith grows, because we know that if you're studying apologetics in every subject, your faith is going to grow, and we're an apologetics company. The second is homeschooling in the real world. We want, a daily schedule. We want to have everything kind of open and go. We want to reduce the amount of friction points that occur in the typical homeschool. So that's our unique selling proposition. We weren't created for the classroom. We weren't created to try to be the most rigorous curriculum available. We have philosophies of education that we believe are very effective for launching students into real life. And so our unique proposition, what makes us unique and why we can be confident to stand on the field, is to say, we create curriculum for the real world homeschooling. I mean, that's just who we are. It's what we do. And I'm not trying to compete with a Becca, so I'm not worried about competing with a Becca. In creating a unique selling proposition, we know our niche. We know what makes us unique in the marketplace. On a personal level, right? There are people like Duck Commanders. Phil, is it Robertson? He's unique. He just stands out among his peers because he really doesn't care. He is who he is. He goes on TV and he doesn't change. He lives in a trailer and he loves to hunt and he loves Jesus and he's not changing. And we love him because he's Phil Robertson of Duck Commanders, and he's unique and he's authentic. In creating a unique selling proposition in a world that's just full of all these amazing influencers, what I would recommend, or just something to play with mentally to have emotional health, is what makes you unique. What is your unique selling proposition? We have Magnolia Market and is it? I don't know their names, but they're amazing in what they do, and their branding is amazing, and they make it look so simple and easy. But the world already has them. We don't need more of them. We need more of you. And what for your family makes you unique? Our family, I've been very blessed with Kristen in that she is very real and authentic. And so she doesn't put on a lot of pretenses. And with our kids, when we'd go to church, if you have 9 kids and babies and everything else, sometimes looking picture perfect, it's just difficult to do. We were lucky enough to get in the van into church. And sometimes the kids, it was, when we say come as you are, it was that, but we learned to almost embrace that to make other people comfortable. And so even when I pastored, I would preach a lot of Sundays and just a pair of shorts, sneakers, and a t-shirt, because that's who I was. And the kids would come, as they were. And we had the certain standards. You wanted your teeth brushed. We wanted the clothes cleaned and that type of thing. But it was more real. And that's, even in the homeschooling world, we have never tried to be something we weren't. We didn't try to fit into somebody else's stereotypes of what a homeschool family should look like. And years ago, it was real popular. You needed to kind of make your own curriculums, and you needed to be doing all this hands-on artsy stuff and all that. And for our family, we were more entrepreneurial. We loved business, and we loved the psychology of marketing and dealing with people. And so that's where our emphasis was, and that's where our strength is. And even today, what our children are involved in that have graduated are very entrepreneurial endeavors, and that they serve business well, because that's who we were. We were more in that vein. And so what made us unique was just, we were real, we were business oriented. We weren't trying to be something that we couldn't be. And we appreciate others who were those people. But when we couldn't achieve that, we didn't beat ourselves up over it. And doesn't mean we weren't trying to advance ourselves and to grow as people, or accepting less is more, being victims, or anything like that. It was just what makes us unique. And for us, sometimes making sure that our kids know that Jesus wants them as they are, and they don't need to dress up to impress him or anybody else for that matter, is important to us. This last Sunday, we go to church in Branson, Missouri, and Branson is a beautiful town, has a lot of beautiful people. The church we go to is amazing, and Kristen stayed home, and so I took the kids to church, and I got out of the vehicle, and one of my sons was wearing brown plaid and camouflage shirt. His hair looked like he had just walked out of the bush. I know his teeth were brushed, but just like people would think that they need to drive me down to the shelter and get me some clothes with him. But you know what? I didn't really care, because what I cared about was he was excited to go to church and to his class and to learn more about Jesus. He was excited to meet people and talk to them. And that's where my heart was. It really wasn't in letting everybody know how perfect I am as a dad, because I am far from perfect. And so what makes us unique is that aspect of when you encounter our family, you generally get what you see is what you get. We don't put on a lot of pretenses. So I would encourage you, rather than feeling the need to become one of the bloggers or influencers or Grammys or tubers, is to be an individual. Define what makes you unique. If your family loves to hunt and you're a hunting family, you're a boating family, you're an adventurous family, you're a ministry family, you're ambassadors of Christ, you're those types of things. That's what makes you unique. Embrace what makes you unique as a family, because the Lord needs us all, and the niches win. We need the missionaries as much as we need the business people, and we need the hunters and the adventurers and those who challenge us in those areas. Or maybe your family enjoys athletics, and you're an athletic family and you enjoy the soccer field and those things. Then embrace that aspect of who you are as a family. The second thing that I would suggest is become familiar with the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule applies in business, but it applies in all of life. And it's called the Pareto Principle. But what it is 80% of my effectiveness in life comes from 20% of the activities that I do. And so to be most efficient, I want to figure out what is the 20% of activity that I do and really become good at that, versus being stuck in 80% of things that only produce 20% of my effectiveness. So when it comes to, like social media marketing, you'll find me in Master Books, in the Moms of Master Books. That's what I do well, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy this group of people. I enjoy serving this group of people and being part of this community. So I am most effective spending the majority of my time right here, as opposed to Instagram, YouTube, those types of things. Now, we've added some people, and Jennifer White works with us, and Brittany works with me to help make sure that, if they can take what I do here and maybe put it on YouTube or develop some Instagram content over there, they spend their time and energy kind of using that information. But I know that if I spread myself out and I think I've got to be an Instagrammy and I've got to go tube it and try to do that and go maybe snap some stuff on Snapchat and different things, I'm not going to be as effective as if I just spend my time here communicating with the people that I really like and trying to serve this community. You see what I'm saying? So, and I know even outside voices in business right now are really saying, pick your platform, know where you're most effective. Well, that transfers into life too. There are things about being a dad that I can be really effective with. And then there are some things that when I step outside that comfort zone, it's mentally frustrating. It's exhausting. Not that I shouldn't push myself, but I got to be careful not to dilute myself so that when I'm present, I'm present. And, I can spend a lot of time, even I'm having to adjust the way I operate with my phone just because it's always tied into this group or whatnot. And when I'm present, I need to be present in doing the things that I need to do. So sometimes just being able to say, hey, this needs set aside because it's consuming too much time that's not valuable. It doesn't produce the energy, the results that I need to produce. So when we're talking about homeschooling and the moms who have so much to choose from, what I would say is definitely scale it to the basics. We do a basic 4 with Master Books. The reason is those are your core subjects. So before you do anything else, before we talk about anything else, just make sure that you have a good, solid, doable solution for the core. Math. Does math work? Do your kids enjoy just sitting down doing math? Can you do it as a parent? Or, are you able to make sure it works with them? Because there are a lot of solutions that provide teaching, or even with Master Books, even, you can YouTube certain videos to get complement to different things, but you want to make sure that that's working and that it fits you. So does math work? What about language? Does language work? Do we have a solution that works? With Master Books and the curriculum that Kristen wrote, Language Lessons for a Living Education, that was designed to remove as many friction points, make it engaging for the student, make it so that it was easy for mom to administer. Same thing, because over the years, as Kristen has used a lot of different curriculums, they just weren't effective, and it became, they began to weigh her down. So, social studies, is this something that in our social studies and history, are we engaging the student? Can we do it? Are we enjoying it? Any way we can do this and kind of keeping in mind that 80% of our effectiveness comes from that 20% of activity. Science is the same thing. Is it engaging? Is it relevant? Does it also build their faith? Anything like that. So, then once we know we have the core, then we can begin building on the core, right? Then we want to add the electives that enhance that. And I think we have to be careful that we don't overwhelm the student. And I've said this in the past, we also don't want to put our insecurities onto the student. That happens a lot. Parents need to redeem something. I don't want people to think, I'm not a good homeschool teacher, so I'm going to aggressively pursue making my kid do 10 different subjects, or I'm lacking self-control and I want everything right now. So my kid is going to do 16 subjects this semester because we want it all, as opposed to what's most important. We've talked about it in the past. I think this really goes into the 80-20. What is your end game? What do you want to accomplish with your children? What is most important? Start there and then begin building to that goal. If you listen to every influencer, every blogger, every person who has an opinion, you can lose your way. And I would say first define, what do you want for your family? What is important to your family? See, like with going to church, for my family, I want my family to go because they want to learn about Jesus and they want to connect with a fellowship of believers. I don't really care that they're going to show everybody how pretty and perfect we are. So that's not part of the goal. I'd prefer people don't think that that we live on the streets, but some days the kid sneaks out of the house looking like that. Most of the time when their mom's with us, that doesn't happen, but when it with me, it did. So, we do much better when mom is with us. It just goes without saying. But anyways, okay, so get the basics, right? What makes you unique? What is your goal? What can you be doing? What are the basics that will get you there the quickest? The last point that I would make in this loud and noisy world that we live in is choose your influencers wisely. There are so many people with an opinion, and it's well known that I don't necessarily need to be the expert in everything. I just need to start creating content, getting it out there, and a certain group of people will embrace me as an expert. There's a lot of voices right now in the homeschool world that are offering opinions, and that's good that we have the opportunity to offer opinions. But we need to put it in context. What experience do they have? What place of expertise does this person have when they're giving me advice? It's just too easy to pull up a YouTube video that confirms what I want to hear, or maybe plants a seed of doubt that I don't necessarily need, that they don't know. I mean, a lot of the YouTubers that I came across have young elementary age student, and they're following the mommy blog model of creating an income, but they don't necessarily have the experience to speak about everything. I'm going to say myself included. I'm not an expert in everything. So when I share, it really is from a place of, this is what I would tell myself, but I do have 20 years of experience and a lot of experience in the homeschool, serving the homeschool community. But I would just choose your influencers wisely. It's really easy to get caught up in listening to all kinds of people, and some people are very charismatic and very, it's a pretty picture, but just be careful to ask yourself, okay, when they're saying this information, what experience do they have? Is it just that they like it because it's pretty, or have they, how did they come to this realization that they have? And I say that very delicately because a lot of the influencers that we've worked with and bloggers that we've worked with, we so appreciate what they do and the energy that they put into promoting product and serving product. But when I was out on the web just kind of doing the broad search, I was like, man, I've got thousands of videos to choose from about this curriculum, and I don't know that I would actually give all of them the same weight. Okay. The other thing that I would say about influencers is, it's like an iceberg. I don't think we see the whole picture, and rarely do we see the whole picture. And we've served in ministry long enough. We've served alongside other homeschool families long enough to know that we can all put on a good show for a period of time, but the behind the scenes sometimes isn't as pretty. And if your family isn't in a pretty spot right now, that's okay. That's life. That's life. Life is messy. And I love seeing the images of everything pretty. But when it becomes the expectation that that's where we always have to live, that's just a rough place to be, because nobody can stand up to that level. We just can't. And we all are sinful and broken people. We are married to sinful and broken people. We created and birthed sinful and creative people. We rub shoulders with sinful and creative, sinful and broken people. We rub shoulders with sinful and broken people. And because of that, we're just surrounded by sinfulness and brokenness. So in your homeschool, give yourself some room for grace, because it doesn't always have to look Instagram perfect. You know what I'm saying? So if I was facing the world of homeschooling today, and our heart, Kristen and I's heart, is really helping homeschoolers succeed. How do we give you the tools and the resources necessary so that you enjoy homeschooling, your kids are thriving, and you're excelling? And as I was just doing a market survey here in the last couple of weeks, I've just been overwhelmed by, if I was entering the homeschool world today and this is what I saw, I would feel so inadequate. And yet it was the grace of God all through the seasons that came in and made up for the differences of our inadequacies. And, we made some mistakes. We've had some wins, but it wasn't always perfect. And some days it looked perfect. Some days we did get it right and we did well. But it wasn't always that way. So it's normal. That's the way this goes. It's normal. One of my kids recently got to be able to be exposed to the Christian music industry at a very intimate level. And they were just blown away at how worldly it was, and how often we would put people on pedestals. And we were amazed at hearing some of the stories of different artists and the experiences that they had encountered, the sound people, the production people, and as they began to share their stories of the different artists, how human the people that had been put on pedestals really were. And it was a good experience, because in the same way we do that, we turn on the computer, you see the post, you see the Instagram, you see the YouTube video, and it's like, this person is Jesus must they've got the direct number, and that isn't always the case. I don't know that it's ever the case. I think as long as we're dealing with humans, we're dealing with the human condition. So my encouragement to you this year is, as you're sorting through the sea of information, that you are able to step back a little bit and say, thank God that he created us for who we are and uniquely as who we are. Let's focus on the basics first. Then we can add to it. If life gets too busy, we can back up from it. And then let's just choose some influencers that challenge us, but also speak to us and where we are. All right. Well, I hope this was a blessing for somebody. And if you're in that spot, I do pray that you're able to understand the grace and mercy of Jesus in all of our lives, in all of the seasons that we're in, and that we don't have to be perfect in homeschooling. We are, but so many times, our imperfection, the most imperfect of my homeschooling is still better than the perfect that I've seen coming if my kids had been in a public school environment. So that my imperfection is always greater than from the perfection, and definitely the imperfection that I see from government schools. And that is opinionated, but I'm willing to back that statement up anytime. So, and I've seen more homeschool families get so discouraged because they were fighting with curriculum choices or influences that were discouraging or whatever, and they felt that it would be better to put them back in a public school environment and allow the government to raise their child, and that just didn't go well at any level. So I would encourage you to still know, even in your imperfection, with the help of Jesus Christ, you will definitely be better than the alternative. All right. So I have said enough to get me into trouble today, but I pray God's blessing on you this week. And as you're making decisions, and some of you had started schooling, we love seeing that. Want to see your teens of Master Books picks. If you can snap the picture, I know they're not always smiling or they're being goofy, but that's good. All right, guys. Hey, God bless you. And may he give you wisdom and insight as you continue in your journey. We'll talk to you later.